Hello, my name is Naomi Schiff. I'm a former professional racing driver and Sky Sports F1 pundit, and this is Unpacked. How long does it take to learn to drive a new racing car? Well, it sort of does depend on how much track time you have, but I would say with a new car, being a racing driver already, probably at least a full test day, maybe two to get to know the car's real limits. So 2 full test days is my answer to that. How do 24-hour races work, and do you literally drive for 24 hours solid? So no, you do not drive 24 hours solid. That would be dangerous. Typically in a professional racing team racing in a 24-hour race, you would have 3 racing drivers. So the time is split between all 3 of you, and it's not necessarily split equally. Depends on the championship and their regulations, but typically you would have a limit of 2 back-to-back stints, which are limited to the size of your fuel tank for efficiency. So whenever you've emptied the tank, you come in, you refuel, you go again. There are some championships that limit it to 2-hour driving stints maximum for a driver. So depending on how the race goes, if there are flags, red flags, or if there's purple flag, which exists in 24-hour racing, it's like a neutralizing the race, your time isn't necessarily split equally between the 3 of you. How long does it take to learn a track layout? Can you race a track without ever seeing it before? So if you're well prepared, you will know what the track layout looks like before you get on track, but there are scenarios where that's not the case. Sometimes even test days where you get to the track, you've maybe looked at a track map, but you can't fully picture it from the track map. So yes, you can get on the track without knowing the track fully, but I would say, how long does it take to get to know track layouts? It sort of depends on how well you can memorize things, but I would say personally, it would usually take me about 3-4 laps. Maybe 5, maybe 6, depending on how technical the track is, how long it is. For example, a track like Nordschleife, it takes much longer than that to learn the track. Are there any other sports that cross over with motor racing in terms of skill set? Funnily enough, I think skiing is one of them. I recently was skiing, or I skied quite a lot in the past, but recently I went skiing and I just remembered how much it reminds me of racing because firstly, if you do it well, you're fast. Second of all, racing lines, the way you place yourself, there's a lot of things that make me think of racing, so I'd probably say skiing. What is the latest you can turn up to the racetrack pre-race? Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a one-size-fits-all answer to this one. I think it really depends on what's in the schedule. Usually you have loads of media activities to be done, even briefings with your team about strategy and all that kind of stuff. So it really does depend on how much your team manager loves you, how late you can get there. Is it difficult to adjust to driving a road car home after a weekend of racing? So yes, it is, for multiple reasons, but I'd say if you're racing a car with no ABS, the first thing you'll notice when you get into your road car is that you're slamming the brake a lot harder than you should, and your passengers do not appreciate it. On top of that, sometimes when you're just cruising, you think you are going according to the speed limit, and quite often you don't have that perception of how quick you're going because you go much quicker on the racetrack. So you have to keep looking at the speedometer and making sure that you're driving according to the speed limit. What do the pit boards tell you that you don't hear through your team radio? So typically, a pit board is used as a backup. Usually what it'll have on there is what lap you're on, how many laps you're going to drive that stint. So let's say 1 of 10 or whatever. Who's behind you, gaps. It's something that you can discuss with your mechanics, with your engineers, what you would like to see and what information works for the 2 of you. But every now and again, there are failures with the radios and you don't have the communication you should have, in which case, whatever they can communicate with you on the pit board will be put on there. So I, for example, once had a drive-through penalty in a race and my radio wasn't working, so they had to communicate that to me on the pit board. So it is an important piece of equipment when things go wrong. Do you need to have a driver's license to be a racing driver? So the answer to that is no. I had my first racing license when I was 11. I had my first single-seater, so main circuit or big circuit racing license when I was 16, and I only ever got my driver's license when I was 18. So the answer to that is no. Do you ever lose count of what lap you're on? Personally, yes. I think you don't count what lap you're on. Every now and again on a racetrack, you'll have a clock that's quite visible, but that's again what the communication with the engineer is for and what the pit board can help with. Very difficult to keep count of that. What would happen if you went against team orders from the pit wall? So I would say that drivers of the past got away with this kind of thing a lot easier than drivers of modern day times do. there's a lot more evidence of misbehavior because often you've got onboard cameras. Sometimes there's GoPros in the cockpit, depending on what car you're racing, obviously. You've got all the data, and it's very difficult to lie about anything. In the past, I think that was a lot easier, but it doesn't mean that all of us have not done it at one point. Don't want to speak for everybody, but there are definitely moments in your career where you need to go against the pit wall and kind of go against what your team is saying. That's not always a good thing to do, but in some cases it might be necessary. How do you deal with jet lag when traveling between races? So the tips that people would give you would be to adjust to the time period of the location you're going to a couple of days before. I personally can sleep anywhere, anytime, whenever. So that definitely helps me. But also at the frequency that we're traveling at and how often it's happening and how different the time zones are, I tend to think that I'm not on any time zone at any given point in time. So yeah, I mean, there's no real formula, but yeah, get as much sleep as you can. Sleep whenever you can, basically, would be my advice. And also, if you are traveling to a location, try to get there in the day rather than in the night. Because if you land at night and you're wide awake, it's very difficult to fall asleep and then you're ruined. Whereas if you land in the day and you're tired, you're more likely to stay up, just go outside, go for a walk, keep yourself busy, fight against it, and then go to sleep when you're tired in the evening. What do you need to do if you need the toilet during a race? So, nervous pees are a real thing. I think before every race, you'll see drivers running up and down back to their pits to go have one last toilet break. When you're in the car, you do normally, I would say, again, speaking for myself here, before the race, you do have that sense of needing to go for a pee. You do have the sense of needing to pee, but for me personally, I've never felt the need to use the toilet while I was driving, because I think the sense of adrenaline takes away that feeling. Some other drivers don't have that, and then they just go to the toilet in the car. Yikes.